And time to take a look at your traffic and weather one more time for your ride in on this Veterans Day Monday. Have an accident out at Old Cherokee Road and Old Chapin Road, another one at Amex Ferry Road and Lake Tide. Kaufman Road and Presley Road as well showing an accident, and then one more at Hardin Drive and Colonial Drive as well. Temperature today, a little bit rainy. High is expected to get into the mid-70s. Do expect a little bit of sunshine later on in the afternoon. And that is your traffic and weather for this Monday here on the Early Game. Nine o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher along with you. Another good Reaction Monday, Jack, is once again the Gamecocks able to walk away with a victory, this time on the road up there in Nashville, 28-7 over the Vanderbilt Commodores. You were in the house for kind of a rainy and ugly day in Nashville, but South Carolina able to walk out once again and get themselves to bowl eligibility.
Yeah, it was a great game for the Gamecocks. It was, surprisingly, the weather actually held up, like the rain and stuff held up for the most part during the game. It's just the before and the after, of course, where the monsoon just occurred. And then after the game, it's like the field was flooded. I mean, it was a mess. But great game for South Carolina. I thought they played very well for the most part in all three phases. And, hey, they're bowl eligible. So there will be at least one extra game, a 13th game for this team at the very least.
Well, and for getting bowl eligibility, that's plenty enough reason to hit our usual Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. And again, plenty of reason to celebrate coming off of Saturday's game. And, I kind of looked at this game as one of the more important ones of the entire year, not only from the fact that you were taking on a Vanderbilt team that is a lot tougher than we all thought they were going to be at this point of the year, but you come off this huge victory over A&M. You finally defeat a ranked team for the first time in over almost 2 years, and you did it in a very convincing fashion. And there are plenty of people that hit us on the text line or on Twitter or whatever it was, said, this is where the Carolina let you down. This is where they go on the road the next week, taking on an unranked team, and they lay an egg. And Carolina didn't do that. I know it was tied at halftime, 7-0 game, but they opened it up in the second half and end up walking out of there with a 3-touchdown victory, which I feel like maybe not makes the same statement as last week, but makes a statement nonetheless.
No, it's a huge statement. And look, I think with this team, we said it last week multiple times, they had the right mindset and mentality going into the week. They essentially just weren't buying into all the rat poison and the pats on the back and stuff. They were focused on going 1-0, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, look, they played a really clean game, I thought, for the most part. Like, yeah, they had a turnover, but other than that, I thought they were really well-disciplined this game. A few penalties here and there, but, South Carolina led in this game majority of the way. Like from the second quarter on, they were leading, and it just felt like they kind of had Vanderbilt on a string essentially the entire game. It's like South Carolina was the one kind of in control.
Well, and they never lost control of the game. And I thought what was probably the most important sequence of the entire game in the second half. Carolina comes out after halftime, scores a touchdown, go up 14-0. And look, we know Vanderbilt is very much a second half team. We've seen them in many games this year. Where they trailed Ball State at halftime a couple weeks ago and then turned it on in the second half. The third and fourth quarter are when Diego Pavia really ends up heating up. So after Carolina scores that touchdown, you give the ball back to Vanderbilt. Suddenly Pavia is making those scrambles. He's making those big plays, and you're starting to see the momentum kind of turn their direction a little bit. They go down the field. They score that touchdown. Pavia accounted for 68 of the 75 yards they had on that drive. You're thinking, okay, critical point in the game here. Carolina's facing a 3rd and 5 at midfield. Again, Vanderbilt just scored the touchdown. They hand the ball off to Rocket. He gets hit about 2-3 yards short of the line to gain, pushes the pile, gets the first down, extends the drive. Carolina obviously goes on to score the touchdown to put it up 21-7 at that point, and the game was pretty much over from there. So you took what little bit of momentum Vanderbilt had, and you snatched it right away from them. I thought that was probably the most important sequence. So that 3rd and 5 might have been the most important play of the entire game.
There were a lot of moments in that game where it's like South Carolina was really, really efficient in continuing drives. And here's the big stat for you, Tyler. We talked about how great Vanderbilt is on third down. Like, I think they went, like 12 of 18 on third down to beat Alabama a few weeks ago.
Yep.
South Carolina kind of beat them at their own game. They went 9 of 12 on third down, which is a really impressive number. And when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, a lot of these drives South Carolina had, there had to be a big play made. Like, you go back to, we'll talk about all of them, obviously, but the Lenore Sellers 51-yard pass after breaking out of a sack, that's a huge play right there. Nick Harbor making that 23-yard catch to set up the Josh Simon touchdown the next play. And then obviously Rocket throughout this entire game. Just whenever the offense needed to respond to something Vanderbilt did, they did so. And I think that's such an important thing that just show that this offense has really come a long way since all those turnovers it had against Alabama.
Well, and we saw, last week against Texas A&M where they went for over 500 yards of offense. Like, wow, this is the offense we've been waiting for this entire season. Is that a one-game thing, or are they really going to be turning it on in this last month of the season like we saw them do 2 years ago? And once again, just like the week before, they pretty much outdid every statistical category as far as averages go on offense coming into the game. The only thing they didn't invest was their point average. They scored 28. Their average was 30.5 coming in. But rush offense, 214 compared to an average of 178 coming in. Pass offense, 238 compared to 193 coming in. Total offense, 452 compared to 369 coming in. Sacks allowed, they didn't allow any. Tackles for loss allowed, they only allowed 5, which is below average what they had this entire year. As you mentioned, their third down conversions, 33% coming in. They completed 75% of them. So again, this kind of reinforces what we've said really for the past week or so, that this seems like the side of the ball that's just taking the big leap forward in this last month of the year. And again, with the defense playing as good as it already is, you can beat anybody.
No, most definitely. Like, this is everything kind of coming together at the right time. And look, we're 3 games into this now where things have kind of started really coming together for South Carolina, especially in this month of November. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's still 3 games to go, but it's a great sign that, like, it's not a fluke. Like, they did it one game against A&M. Great. Try doing it again. They definitely did it. And I think there's a way to argue that in some areas they were probably better in this game. I thought they ran the football very well, especially on third down. And I thought they were just really good at extending drives and making some big plays, which, again, for an offense that, like a few weeks ago, we were talking about as being abysmal, I feel like they've done a complete 180 in these last few weeks. And a lot of credit just needs to be given to Dal Loggins, Lenore Sellers, Rocket Sanders, Shane Beamer, just everyone on that offense, the offensive line. Everyone has taken their game to a completely different level in these last few weeks.
Given that you were in attendance for this one, what was the atmosphere? What was the energy like with the Vandy crowd? And how did that ebb and flow throughout the game?
Well, can I just say the foghorn that they blare is the most annoying thing. It's like I don't even know where they have it. Like it just vibrates underneath the press box and it's just like shaking. It feels.
Wait, what's more annoying, that or the Vandy Whistler?
Hold on, what's the Vandy Whistler? I'm trying to remember.
You don't know the Vandy Whistler from baseball?
Oh no, I haven't covered baseball there yet. So.
Oh, okay. So you've not encountered the Vandy Whistler, the older fan that whistles the entire game. He's at like every Vanderbilt home game. He's very annoying. I'm sure. I can't remember if they're going to Vanderbilt this year or not, but you'll encounter him at some point, and he might actually be worse than that foghorn. I'm just gonna try and prepare you.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, look, the foghorn's annoying, but I will answer the question though. Yeah, I mean, look, the crowd. I thought, honestly, dude, there might have been more South Carolina fans there. It just sounded like anytime, like there were Gamecock chants going on throughout the game and stuff. There was a lot of Garnet, and look, it's hard to tell with how many rain jackets there are in the crowd and stuff,
right?
Because rain jackets are like every different color. But you definitely saw a ton of South Carolina fans, especially on the visitors' sideline. And it was kind of weird. They had the student section for Vandy on the visitors' sideline, which I thought was strange. But, yeah, I don't know if they outnumbered Vandy, but, look, it was a good crowd. And I'm sure a lot of Gamecock fans were really happy with the way things went out there in Nashville.
Well, I would imagine, like, before the season, for those that buy Vanderbilt season tickets, they may have just gone ahead and sold a bunch of games to the visiting fans, because that's what, like, Vanderbilt's become, right? With how Nashville's grown up a lot, in these past few years or so, that, visiting fans see that as a destination. Like, hey, we're going to go to Nashville. We're going to get a very easy win, and we can go hang out on Broadway after the game. And obviously, Vanderbilt ended up having a change of plans with how much better they ended up being this year. But I imagine there were a lot of people that had already sold their tickets to this game months ago that probably were like, oh, man, I kind of would have wanted to go to that, actually.
Definitely. And there were a ton of people out there in Broadway because I went to Broadway on Friday, and it was packed, but like there were a lot of Gamecock fans out there. Like I ran into like at least a couple dozen, and I think it just really shows that, yeah, I mean, look, who wouldn't want to make a trip out to Nashville? But like there are Gamecock fans everywhere. Like that is the truth of it. There were a lot in Oklahoma. There were a lot in Alabama. I mean, there were a lot out here in Nashville. So people want to travel to see this team, and the more and more they keep winning, the more it's going to be like this, and it will only grow moving forward.
Well, speaking of traveling to see the team, do you have a ideal destination where you'd like to see them to go play a bowl game at?
Oh, gosh, I've had this conversation a few times now. Anything that's not right after Christmas, meaning like December 27th. So more ideally, New Year's Eve would be
I think they've played themselves into position. Again, you still got to play 3 more games, but they'll beat Wofford. I think they probably should beat Missouri this weekend. I mean,
if you lose to Missouri, look, Missouri, well, that's a whole nother conversation. But watching Missouri play the other day, you should be able to beat them. I see why they're 2 touchdown favorites, but like, come on.
The last 3 minutes of that game were the most insane thing I've ever watched.
It was ridiculous.
But assuming Carolina can get to at least 8-3, and then we'll see what happens against Clemson, which that's still a winnable game. If you can at least get to 8 wins, you're in the category of playing one of the December 30th or December 31st bowl games. ReliaQuest Citrus Bowl, Music City Bowl, something along those lines. I don't think you're going to have to go to Shreveport, Louisiana a day after Christmas or something, or Birmingham or something like that. I think wherever they play will be a decent destination at best.
Totally. If I had to just say outright where I think they're going to go, I would probably say one of the Florida Bowl games, because that just seems to be the right spot. I know people have talked about Vegas, but I don't know what the requirements are there. And I'm sure Vegas is going to want a team that's probably closer than South Carolina.
I think we'll all take a road trip to Tampa on December 31st.
I'm down with that. If they want to get to the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, I'm also down with that. I mean, that would mean the most well sought out SEC team after the playoffs. So.
I was going to say that's going to go to the team that just misses the playoffs in the SEC. Which, if you go 9-3, I'm not saying you're going to be like 13th in the playoff rankings, but if you're the first SEC team out at like 15th or 16th, it's possible. So all that's on the table.
When's the last time South Carolina's made the Citrus Bowl? I think the last time they went was when it was the Capital One Bowl. So against Wisconsin or Nebraska.
So. I still refer to it as the Capital One Bowl To be
It's
honest,
close enough.
the Capital
But I
One
do-
Bowl, the Outback Bowl, the Meineke
The
Car
Outback.
Care Bowl up the road, like I still call it traditional bowl names.
Oh man, but I think there's a good chance they're going to go to Florida for a bowl
Well,
game. But hey, they've never been to the
hey,
Music City Bowl.
That's
and
true. Well,
expect the Nashville wouldn't be bad.
they are going to a bowl game. We can say that with 100% confidence now that they've won their 6th game of the year. We'll dive back into what happened on Saturday. Take a look at the offense, what happened with Rocket Sanders and Illinois Sailors both having another huge game out there in Nashville. It is the Extra Point on Your Reaction Monday. Tyler Ed and Jack Beltry here in the game.
Hey, want to tell you about our show sponsor, PL Wine Pool and Spa. They're an award-winning swimming pool builder that's been in the business for 25 years with more than 40 years of pool construction experience. They service the entire Midlands area, whether you're looking for a weekly cleaning maintenance or chlorine to salt conversion with services like safety cover installs and safety fence installs. You can check out all their offerings at the showroom in Lexington, South Carolina, and talk to their experts about any and everything you might need. Their retail store is located at 5541 Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. Again, that is 5541 Sunset Boulevard out in Lexington. And you can also check them out online at PLWinePools.com. So I want to thank PL Wine Pool and Spa for being a wonderful sponsor of 107.5 The Game.
23. Sellers out of the gun, going to set up screen right side, got Sanders, got some blockers out there. Rocket inside the 30, 25, Rocket going left side, 10, 5, launch him, launch, Rocket Sanders, touchdown Carolina, touchdown Rocket Sanders from 43 yards out. What a gorgeous play call from Dow Loggins, and the Gamecocks are going to lock this up.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you on your Reaction Monday here on the game. That was called on Saturday. Rocket Sanders finding the end zone for the third time on the game, helping South Carolina pick up the 28-7 victory on the road there in Nashville. And once again, another stellar day for Rocket Sanders. 15 carries, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns, added 2 more receptions, and 1 touchdown through the air as well, which was that last one there that he brought in from 43 yards. And man, Jack, we saw glimpses early in the season of Rocket Sanders looking like Rocket Sanders. Obviously had the monster game against LSU earlier on in the year, dealt with some injuries, starting with that Akron game. But, man, he looks 100%, and he is eating every single weekend now.
Oh, man, he looks phenomenal out there. I mean, look, this is a complete 180 from what he was doing. To put it in perspective, here's an interesting stat for you, Tyler.
Okay.
The LSU game, he had, 143 yards? The
Yes.
next 4 games, he only combined for 141 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That just shows a lot of he wasn't getting a ton of yards. Like, he wasn't making a ton of big plays. Since the bye week, he has been going off. I think he's put up, 270 yards. He has been looking phenomenal out there and playing like the Rocket Sanders everyone signed up for when he transferred to South Carolina. He just kicks it into another gear when he gets a lane and he has space, even if he's got guys in front of him. Like Shane Beamer was saying, he'll take his chances with Rocket in a one-on-one situation because they're going to win that battle more times than not, because there's a 230-pound running back you got to bring down, and that just makes it uber tough to even get him to the ground.
Here's a little bit of Rocket Sanders after the game talking about when he sees open grass when he's got the ball in his hands.
Really, a lot of people don't understand that seeing that green grass is harder than not seeing green grass. Because when you see green grass, it's like you tend to go where your mind want to take you. That's why I feel like that fumble occurred last game. You know what I mean? But I just when I see green grass, it'd be like, man, lovely. You got to take advantage of it. You know what I mean? Just want to give a big shout out to the receivers today. You know what I mean? I feel like they helped me out on being on the perimeter and blocking. That's the key thing we work on in practice, you know what I mean? And, just running to the ball as well. I feel like this throughout practice, that's what we was working out this week, and they helped me out on perimeter and then the offensive line too as well.
Yeah, that green grass is lovely, that's for sure. 126 yards on the ground, 108 of those occurring after contact, forced 5 missed tackles on the game. Again, looking like the Rocket Sanders we'd been hoping to see consistently the entire season. And as he alluded to there, the run blocking these past 2 weeks has been really, really good, not only from the interior of your offensive line, but on the outside as well, with your backs, with your tight ends, with your wide receivers. And again, it's something that at the beginning of the year was a big struggle. Is there still work to do? Absolutely, but it has certainly come a ways, and we're seeing that on full display with what Rocket Sanders has been able to do these past 2 weeks.
He is, again, like I said, it's a mixture of, I asked Shane about this yesterday, how much of it is Rocket making the cuts, being physical, being tough to bring down, and how much of it is the offensive line creating holes and, making things possible for Rocket to run through. And he said it's a combination of both, which I guess, it totally makes sense. Look, this offensive line has been drastically better over the last 2 weeks. And notice how much better South Carolina's offense plays when the blocking is better. Was it perfect in these 2 games? No. There are times where Sellers definitely could have been sacked. But the point is, Rocket and these running backs are having nice holes to run through. It's not even just Rocket. Oscar Attaway kind of had a decent game too himself. He had some nice runs in this game as a nice complementary back right behind Rocket. So good all around from the run game in this game. He had over 200 yards again, and that's what you're going to need from this offense to be successful.
Yeah, Attaway, 34 yards on 8 carries, so average a little over 4 yards per carry. And when he got his number called, he went out there and made some things happen. Also brought in a reception as well. And look, we knew this running back room was going to be deep this year, just for the sheer number of guys that they had when you brought in Adway, when you brought in Jordan Howe. We just didn't know what the dynamics of that room were going to look like past Rocket Sanders. And obviously Rocket Sanders is out there for the majority of the staffs, but it is nice to see Oscar Adway coming along a little bit himself to serve as that nice little reprieve for when Rocket, needs to come out and take a breather, that, you can get a couple of yards out of him as well. And, we'll obviously see what happens in the offseason once I'm assuming Rocket moves on and probably goes and plays to the next level. That, if Oscar Adway can be that feature back, obviously we still got a lot of football to be played between now and then, but it's good to see this running game living up to the potential, and Lenore Sellers has included this as well, living up to the potential of what we thought it could be prior to the season.
Most definitely. Sellers is a huge part of this run game, and that is a good thing because that means he's been really progressing over the course of the season. But you're right, man. I think this run game really goes as far as it can take him, for South Carolina's sake. The offense has been so much better for a lot of reasons. Pass game, I feel like, still has a little bit of work, a little bit of room to grow, obviously. I thought Sellers, at early points in the game, there were a lot of times where you're like, oh, yeah, this receiver open, man. And I think he did a better job as the game wore on of figuring out who his targets are. But this run game is the most consistent thing South Carolina has right now. And with Adway being what he is right now, is a nice, complimentary back, like I said before, it's really going to benefit South Carolina. They got multiple guys that can go out there and run the football.
Well, and obviously when you run the ball well and, the defense has to account for that, it opens up your passing game, which is certainly something that South Carolina was successful with on Saturday. And when you look at Lenore Sellers' stats, I think he had his best all-around game this entire season, completed 70% of his passes, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, added another 38 yards on the ground, no interceptions, didn't get sacked a single time. This truly was, and I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show where, you had this great game last weekend. Yeah, only completed about 50% of his passes, but we saw him Houdini his way out of a bunch of sacks, about 7 or 8, against Texas A&M and their good defensive front. And we wondered, okay, is that just a one-game thing, or is this who Lenore Sellers is going to be going forward? And we saw once again on Saturday, no, this is who he is now. He is finally hitting his stride, and I expect him to play like this for the rest of the season.
If he does, again, South Carolina can really do some crazy things here potentially. And look, every game on the schedule feels winnable at this point, so long as your offense continues to play the way they are. That's the big caveat in all this, right? We've seen the offense have really good moments these last few weeks. We've also seen moments where the offense has kind of looked lifeless at times. So as long as things continue to trend the way they are, I see no issue with where things are going. And to do that, the offense needs Lenore Sellers. They need Rocket Sanders. But you're right, man. I think Sellers probably did have his best game of the year, as if last week wasn't good enough. I'll argue last week was probably better because he didn't have a turnover in that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did have the one fumble on Saturday.
Yeah. So, but look, otherwise, man, he played really well in this game. And again, that 51-yard pass play to Jared Brown to avoid the sack. What else can you say about that play? Because if he goes down at the 5-yard line there for a sack, who knows how the momentum shifts in that game, because Vanderbilt scored right after that. Anyway, but Sellers, that set up a touchdown by Sanders 2 plays later. So really good game all around for the offense, and I think you have to be really happy with the progress this group has made.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we know the defense has played really strong. We'll get to them here coming up in a minute, but seeing the offense finally really start coming to life in this last month of the season, as you are pushing, obviously now gotten to bowl eligibility, but maybe getting to 8 or 9 wins on the year. The offense is going to go a long way with that, and we're not talking about them like the dead appendage that you're having to drive along. They're finally holding their up their end of the deal here.
Oh, definitely. Again, just everything is coming together, and that is the perfect time for things to come together. It'd be one thing if it came together in October, September, but I think it's better that it's coming together with 3 games left to go in the year, and it just means, again, November to remember for South Carolina. They play their best football in November. What are they, 10-4 now in this month in Shane Beamer's tenure? It just speaks to how much better they've gotten as the year has gone along.
We'll dive into the defense and the great performance they had on Saturday, holding Diego Pavia and that Vanderbilt offense at bay coming up. It is the Extra Point on Reaction Monday. If you want to weigh in, 803-404-6100, Love Chevrolet phone lines, and the Firehouse Subs text line as well. Tyler and Jack here with you on the game. It's all right here once again telling you, as always, about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Got some rain this weekend, including some today as well. And if you've experienced rain and have a crawl space under your home, you could be dealing with some serious foundation issues like standing water under there. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. They can send a professional out to your home to evaluate what's going on with your crawl space and your foundation and get it fixed right so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Because with water under your home, it can create things like high humidity and condensation in that crawl space that can grow mold, mildew, and invite pests, things like termites and whatnot as well. That moisture can also lead to wood rot and floor joist problems, so you need to get a hold of that if it is a problem with your home. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicts.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist.
backfield is working out of the shotgun. 3 wide receivers right side, and Pavio gets the ball knocked out of his hand. A great rush from the edge. And then it's Kyle Kennard who jumped on it. I believe he's the one who knocked it out. A strip sack for Kyle Kennard. And Kennard goes into the top 10 all-time single season sack artist at Carolina.
Not good enough, man. You can shoot for perfection. You'll never hit perfection, but the least we can do is get donuts. That'll show that we on the way to it, So we got to keep climbing. We got to get it.
Welcome back. It is Reaction Monday. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on the game. First bit you heard there was Kyle Kennard getting the strip sack after South Carolina had just given the ball away to Vanderbilt in plus territory. Immediately grabbing it back was Kyle Kennard with the strip sack and with the recovery. And then Debo Williams still talking about chasing donuts. They almost had it on Saturday. They shut them out in the first half. Vanderbilt offense did put together that one drive in the second half, but other than that, South Carolina's defense did hold them in check pretty much the entire game. Is again, we're saying it every week, it's the strength of this team. This pass rush is nasty, and they held one of the stars of college football this year in Diego Pavia to not a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, Pavia had some nice plays here and there, but overall, man, this defense swarmed the backfield. It took some time to get the sacks and the TFLs and stuff on Pavia just because he's so elusive when given even a little bit of space, as we saw in this game. But overall, man, defense was great. I thought everyone did their job. I mean, look, 7 points on the scoreboard. That's it. Like, that's really, really satisfying. And it came in the third quarter. So they nearly pitched a shutout. But, hey, hats off to this defense because they continue to just ball out.
Pavia was under pressure on 54% of his dropbacks in this game. South Carolina's defensive front generated 19 total pressures, led by Dylan Stewart. Brian Thomas Jr. got a couple quarterback hits in there. Bam Martin Scott was having a good day. Obviously, they're getting good push up front when it came to slowing the run game down. Again, just one of those games where we'd be here all day talking about all these individual performances. Everybody went out there and did their job.
No, definitely. And pressuring Pavia was going to be such a big focal point in this game because you knew how dangerous he could be as a dual threat quarterback. But when you eliminate the first part of his abilities, which is the run game, and yeah, he had a few nice runs here and there, for the most part, man, he's having to run for his life. There were so many times in this game, dude, where he is just, Pavia's under fire, and he's just throwing the ball up into no man's land, trying to make a play or get the ball out of bounds. And I think like 3 or 4 times you could argue he should have been picked off because the ball just was hanging up in the air for so long. But he kind of got lucky. And I thought as the game wore on, when you forced him into these pressure situations, he ended up throwing it. And on 2 key 4th down situations, Vanderbilt came up empty because South Carolina's defense showed up and really played well on 4th down. So, again, kudos to this defense, but priority number 1 in this game for them was definitely slowing down Pavia, which they most certainly did.
Well, and one thing that Pavia and this offense have done really well this year is just hit big plays down the field. He was 1 of 5 on deep throws greater than 20 yards. And again, he just had pressure in his face the entire time. A lot of those were throwing the ball away or just ill-advised throws, in general. And again, the big key was slowing him down because he is the most valuable player to this team. And when you take him off the field, and he did get hurt later in the game, but the game is already well in South Carolina's hands at this point in time. But, this offense doesn't move without him. And again, you're able to hold him at bay, or you're going to hold this entire offense at bay, which is what South Carolina was able to do.
No, most definitely. Again, there's a reason why Vanderbilt is good this year, and it's basically on the shoulders of Diego Pavia, which, again, a whole other thing with the situation is him, suing the NCAA. So I wonder how much of effect that had on his readiness for this game. But at the same time, look, I mean, it's football. Like, you go out there and play, but the South Carolina defense is not to be trifled with. They are as legit as it gets. I think they can really hang with any team in the country. That's why I feel like this is a championship level caliber defense. Like, if they even sneak into the playoff, which could, you feel really good about your chances solely based on the way this defense plays.
And when you kind of look at it, Carolina held Vanderbilt under 100 yards in 3 of the 4 quarters on Saturday. They had the one quarter in the third on Saturday where they had 126 yards that included that long touchdown drive that gave them their only score of the game. But besides that, again, Carolina really did their job, generated the takeaway there with Kyle Kennard in what was their best opportunity to score early on in that game, and obviously just again kept pressure on the entire game, which we knew they were capable of doing, and this wasn't the greatest offensive line in the world in Vanderbilt. They were solid, but again, Carolina seemed to wreak havoc up front the entire game.
And the thing with up front was that they got banged up so many times in this game. Like Tonka Hemingway, we don't know for sure, but it looked like his hand is busted because I mean it had to be wrapped up and stuff, and he had to come out of the locker room and whatnot. There was a lot of rotation in this game, a lot of guys going in and out and stuff. And all of them seemingly made a big impact in this game, which is such a good thing, a good sign that we always knew how strong the depth was going to be for this team, but it was certainly on full display on Saturday.
Demetrius Knight playing with his hair on fire all over the place once again, and again, Stewart and Kennard generating their pressures and getting sacks, and it just, again, an all-around great performance by what is looking like one of the best defenses in all of college football this year.
No, I mean, what more can you say, man? It's like every area of this team, like, and here's an underrated thing, man. DQ Smith didn't play on Saturday.
That's right.
With a little bit of an injury from Shane Beamer, and Peyton Williams steps up, backup defensive back, and has a great game. 7 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and one of them came on a 4th down stop in the 3rd quarter. So, again, it's just everyone on this defense is playing well. It doesn't matter who you throw out there. You could put a random 11 out there. They're going to do their job, and they're going to give you a good chance to win the ball game.
Well, and that's what kind of sticks out to me from Saturday. Again, Brian Thomas Jr. and Ben Martin Scott both had huge impacts. It's not just Kennard. It's not just Stewart. It's not just Debo Williams. It's not just Demetrius Knight. These guys, the second level of this defense, second on the depth chart, however you want to phrase it, they're getting theirs too. You know, JT Gear, guys like that are going out there and making plays. This team's deep all the way around. And even in a game like on Saturday where you were out without DeAndre Jules, you were without Nick Barrett, you still had plenty of push up front on your defensive line when it came to slowing down the run game. Like everything worked as it should. And that's what gives you so much confidence in this team with how the defense plays, that they can compete with anyone.
No, definitely. They've proven by this point. Look, the Ole Miss game feels like the only blemish on the schedule because you got beat by 24 points. But outside of that, man, it's like every game you are pretty much in thanks in part to your defense. And that is going to go a long way this season if things kind of play out the way they can, with potentially going 9-3. That would be off the backs of how good this defense has been.
Well, and that loss to Ole Miss looks like more of a quality loss now, given what they did to Georgia over the weekend. So, again, I think Carolina's too far out to make a push for the playoffs, so I don't think that stuff's going to end up mattering. But you keep winning, you're going to be able to get yourself in the top 20 in the playoff rankings before the season's over.
No, definitely. And, again, never say never. I don't think they're going to the playoff either. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's a chance. A lot of things would need to happen. With how crazy the season, I wouldn't put it past them to sneak in somehow. But, look, all you can do is control what you can control. You lost 3 games. So be it. Make sure you don't lose another game again. And there's a legit shot, man. They could win these final 3 games here and finish out 9-3, which would be really remarkable.
Yeah, and obviously that would just say that what happened last year was more of a blip on the radar than anything else, not necessarily the new norm, going forward. It is Veterans Day today, by the way, and the halftime show, myself, Terry Ford, we're going to be out at Hardee's at 496 Piney Grove doing today's edition of the show from 12 until 3. You can come by and see us. Then in the 3 o'clock hour today on postgame show, Jay and Elijah are going to be joined by the owners of All-American Heat and Air, who are both veterans themselves, again, as we celebrate this Veterans Day on November the 11th. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point, get to some of your thoughts on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, Firehouse Subs text line, as you react to South Carolina's 28-7 victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores on Saturday, reaching bowl eligibility here on Your Reaction Monday here on The Game. Welcome back.
It is the
extra point. Tyler Head and Jack Vetri along with you on your Reaction Monday here on the game. Lower Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest does roll on to another week. $1,000 up for grabs this weekend against Missouri. We were so close. Almost 2 years in a row, a special teams touchdown against Vanderbilt. Late third quarter, Kai Kroger lets off a punt that the returner drops. Almost got scooped up for a punt return fumble touchdown for South Carolina. Our ball ends up bouncing out of bounds at the 1 yard line instead. Great punt by Kai Kroger, but man, and I texted Elijah. I said Lori Lisa was sweating on that one.
Oh, definitely. I thought it was a great punt first off, but when it rolled around, I'm like, oh my God, South Carolina's going to recover this in the end zone, and then just to see the ball roll out of the end zone or roll out of bounds at the 1 yard line, it's like, man, this team's luck sometimes.
So close.
It's so close. But hey,
But hey,
it'll happen eventually, right?
It will. And if you haven't registered already, go online to 1075thegame.com and see if you can pull home $1,000 this weekend as Carolina ends up taking on Missouri at Williams-Brice Stadium. Again, thanks to Lori Lisa for sponsoring the special teams touchdown contest. Want to head out to Love Chevrolet phone lines, get your reactions on this Reaction Monday. Our guy Ray always ready to weigh in. Ray, appreciate your time. What's on your mind this morning?
Hey, Tyler, how's it going, man? Hey, just wanted to, talk about the Gamecocks, and, man, I tell you, it's fun watching this team because they're a good team, and when they're coming around, and, man, Lenoris, God, is he coming around his game. The plays he is making off sure athleticism is just it's a difference maker. I mean, think about that. I mean, the game was still kind of imbalanced at the time, and the Vanderbilt player had him, about the 3 yard line. And he breaks away and he connects downfield on the 51-yard play. I mean, those are like game changers. When you got players that can make those kind of plays, man, you're going to be in some ball games and you're going to win some ball games. But, man, Rocket Sanders, and I think I called last week and I said, he looks NFL ready. But, man, when he gets those shoulders squared and he's got just a little hole and there's just one guy there, he has the uncanny ability to make that first guy miss. And then he's just off to the races. And I see why this guy's called Rocket now. I mean, just unbelievable. Last 2 weeks watching this guy. And, Nick Harbor's off the milk cart, guys. And what I mean by that, we knew he's talented, but he actually looked like he belonged. I mean, it looked like, he was running good patterns. He was catching the ball. So honestly, I think that's the best game I've seen him in a Gamecock uniform for is because he just looked the part, And I'm not sure who number 7 was, but I thought he had a couple really good catches out there as well. And I think Kyle Kennard I didn't think he'd do it, but I think he's getting close to where we can start talking where he's got a good shot at that sack record that Clowney has. But anyway, hey, it's fun to watch in the Gamecocks right now. And, we got more than hope now because we see that we got a good team. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, 803-404-6100. Obviously, as always, a lot to unpack from what Ray gives us there. Plenty of good stuff. And look, I try not to get my hopes up too high for Nick Harbor because I think we kind of have what we have with him at this point in time. Good game on Saturday. Played really well. Again, that was, like Ray said, maybe one of his better overall games that we've seen as wide receiver. Maybe something's going to happen. I'm not getting my hopes up, but good game on Saturday, Nick Harbor.
Man, don't get your hopes up. It's just we don't know. I mean, look, he was invisible for the past 2 games after OU, or Bama, I should say. So we don't know exactly what it's going to look like for him moving forward, but I will say, I pointed this out in my game story from Saturday. He looked a lot better out there. I mean, he led the team in receiving yards, and he caught his passes. Again, that 23-yard catch he had was the big play he made that led to the Simon touchdown right after. So Nick looked a lot better. I think he made a lot of good routes that he ran. And, I mean, what can you say? It was a good game for him. And it just adds another layer of what this offense can do.
We talked a little bit earlier on in the show. I presented the question of what's worse, the Vandy Whistler or the Foghorn they had on Saturday. And you haven't encountered the Vandy Whistler. yet, but Beth asked on the Firehouse Subs text line, what's worse, the Whistler or the Foghorn or the gun shooting at Oklahoma? We were in Nashville Saturday. I think they all need to be put in a soundproof closet.
Ooh, okay. The gun being shot up at OU, it's not as bad. I still think the Foghorn's far and away the worst. But I will say, like, the shotguns out in OU, it can catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. So that's for sure. And they're very loud. And when OU's rolling, they haven't been this year. But when they're good, I'm sure they'll be shooting that off a ton.
Well, I guess it just depends on how much you spam it, right? Because if you're just doing it after every play or after, like, every positive play, that gets old pretty fast. I know visiting fans get sick of the Gamecock at Willie B that crows quite a bit. So I guess the Foghorn and Vanderbilt can kind of fall into that same category if you're an opposing fan.
Most definitely. Look, I think the Roosters a little annoying too. Hearing after every third down or something like
it's a lot. They play it a lot. I know that
they
much.
They do play it a lot. So it's kind of the equivalent of the Foghorn. But yeah, I mean, look, it does not get worse than that Foghorn. It is annoying, man.
Well, thankfully, we'll know because with the way the schedules worked, you don't have to go back to Vanderbilt for, I'm thinking right, another 4 years at least, because they'd come here. Then you get completely new teams the next 2 years. So at best, 2028, if I'm thinking correctly, 2027.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
It'll be a while before you have to hear it again.
And here's the thing, man. I don't think we've talked about this yet. Vanderbilt Stadium is a disaster.
Well, it's still a work in progress.
It's a construction zone, and you hope by then it'll be fixed.
It is Reaction Monday, another hour to go of the Extra Point here on your Reaction Monday on the Game. 10 o'clock, welcome back in hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro now hanging out here, as it does each and every Monday for the second hour as we continue to react to South Carolina's pretty convincing win on the road Saturday in Nashville, taking down Vanderbilt 28-7. And I said this at the beginning of last hour, the win against A&M was huge from the standpoint that you finally got over that hump of nearly 2 years of losing to ranked teams, 9 losses of those in a row. So you make that statement on a national stage, primetime ABC, in front of the entire world, and there were so many people in this fan base that were worried a letdown was coming. Because you see it all the time. You get a big win, and then on the road the next week or whatever it may be, you end up losing to a team you have no business losing to. Now, this is a Vanderbilt team that's a lot better than people thought they were going to be, and it was a tough matchup. We knew that coming in. And to go in there and win by 3 touchdowns, and outside of the third quarter, pretty much dominate the entire game, that's a huge mark for the Gamecocks, and I think continues to garner more respect from them nationally.
Yeah, and I think especially in a year that we're talking about Vanderbilt seriously and, them being an actual credible program, it was exciting to see them come in and, kind of destroy them on both sides of the ball. I think Sellers was kind of doing stuff, especially in the pocket, creating space. We've been waiting to see that from him. And Rocket Sanders was kind of, again, in the same scenario. We've kind of been waiting to see these versions of these players all season long, and we finally got that showcase this weekend, I feel like.
And for Sellers, I think this is who he is now. We saw the flashes. We saw plays here and there throughout the first 6 to 7 games of the year saying, man, he did this really well, did that really well. Need to clean up the turnovers, need to do this better, need to do that better. And finally last week against A&M, he put together 4 quarters. And that was my question, okay, was that just one game where he just balled out, or is that who he is now? And Saturday, once again, you saw that's who he is. Houdini his way out of another near sack near the end zone, launching a ball deep, I think it was to Jared Brown at midfield, making plays with his feet, making plays with his arm, completing 7% of his passes, getting 2 touchdowns, minus the 1 fumble early in the game. Just an all-around, I won't say perfect performance, but his best performance all around of the entire year.
I mean, just his overall awareness, you could just tell, is completely different from where he was week 1 against Old Dominion. And you're even alluding back to one of those third down conversions. I think it was 3rd and 9, and he looked completely down, I think, at the 5-yard line. And he still managed to roll out to the left and then air out a 30-yard pass that ended up being for a 60-yard gain. So it was just... It was kind of a culmination of seeing that development come together over the span of not even a full season.
And coming out of high school, a lot of people pointed to, having characteristics of like a Cam Newton type quarterback, right? And I'm not saying he's Cam Newton. Again, Cam Newton's one of the best college football quarterbacks of all time. But from his size and athletic standpoint, you see the similarities. And Cam Newton, when he played in the NFL, was the size of a lot of the linebackers trying to tackle him, right? So he shed off blocks, ran over guys, those kind of things. You're seeing that with Sellers now. And again, we've seen it at times this year, but really these past 2 weeks, just routinely getting out of sacks, using those legs, using that athleticism, keeping his eyes downfield, and making plays. Now, earlier on this year, he did that against Alabama, and Larvadain dropped the ball at midfield, but, having more rapport with his receivers to know, hey, keep running, keep the play alive. He's going to get out of it, and he's going to find me open down the field. That's where this offense is really starting to find its feet. And it gives me a lot of confidence in these next 3 weeks. And, again, Wofford's not going to be that much of a problem next weekend, but they can beat Missouri. They can beat Clemson here in a couple weeks, and this team could end up being 9-3 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and it was nice also to see he didn't really need to rely on his legs entirely as much. I mean, like you were saying, having that rapport with his receivers. I mean, you could tell when the pressure came up in certain scenarios, there were receivers ready that he kind of just clicked with, was able to dump off a screen pass and still convert a first down. But then there were other plays where he, had time to kind of survey the field, air out a 20, 30-yard gain. And that also kind of helped Rocket in turn to kind of get going, not just, pushing the ball on the ground, but he also was making some moves, getting the ball in the air as well.
And I think it's become very evident he's the leading receiver on this team, and rightfully so. Josh Simon's the guy in the passing game at tight end. Got another touchdown on Saturday. Obviously had a couple last weekend against A&M as well. Those guys are really clicking very well. And again, it was good to see Nick Harbor make a couple catches. Larvadain brought in a couple, and obviously Sanders had his reception and a touchdown as well. But the passing game primarily runs through Josh Simon. And again, he's an experienced guy, been playing a lot of football, and I think that is the perfect kind of key target for a young guy like Lenore Sellers to have somebody that has been around this game for a long time, has a lot of experience, that can get himself open like Josh Simon's been doing.
It also helps Sellers' case that, he's a big dude. It's going to take usually more than one guy to bring him down, especially on a big 30-yard play. And when you got him running downfield full head of steam, then, I mean, it's a deadly combination for Sellers.
His reaction Monday, I can't remember. Have you encountered Gamecock Larry yet?
Yeah, we spoke to Gamecock Larry.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Just wanted to make sure because we always got to hear what Gamecock Larry has to say, especially after a victory. Gamecock Larry, appreciate your call this morning. I want to say Happy Veterans Day. We know you have served yourself. What's on your mind today?
I just want to say to my fellow veterans out there, I hope you have a blessed Veterans Day. And also, I want to wish Jeff, Jeff, welcome. I hope to meet you sometime. But I'm going to tell you, November to remember. We are going with 2 down and 3 to go. Ain't going to give no predictions, but we going to go 5-0 in November. So we going to win 9-3. We should have beat LSU. We'd have been 10-2. And we gave it to Alabama. We could have been 11-1. But that's all right. But another thing that made me happy this weekend was to see LSU get swamped by Alabama. I don't like Alabama, but I do not, I ain't going to say I hate, because you ain't supposed to hate, but I don't like Georgia. I don't like LSU, and I don't know about and Tennessee. But Jeff, welcome. But I'm going to tell you, 5-0 in November. 5-0 in November. And drink Wentz, or whatever you call it, drink a Wentz. I don't know who you are. Come on down. Bring your Tigers on down. You had our number for 5 years. It's about time to turn the table. We're going to show you a real Gamecock this coming Saturday. Love all y'all. Have a blessed day, and talk to you later. Go Gamecocks. Love all y'all.
Appreciate it as always, Gamecock Clarity, and again, Happy Veterans Day to you and all the veterans out there as well. And look, Gamecock Larry is our most optimistic fan, and we talked to him in the summertime, and he says Carolina's going to go 12-0 in the regular season, run the table, and win the national championship. And he always keeps that optimism. And sitting here right now at 6-3, he says they're going to go 9-3. I think it's very possible. Again, when the defense plays as well as they play, when you have an offense that's now found who it is and can be consistent and score in the last 2 weeks 44 and 28 points, which was not a guarantee earlier on in the season with any of these games, you're finding yourself. And when you have efficient play on both sides of the ball, again, the special teams hasn't been perfect this year, but it's good enough, then there's nobody you can't beat, in my opinion.
I mean, this defense has been a kickstarter in every single win, or almost every single win for this Gamecock team. And now that you have an offense that doesn't look nowhere near as stuck as they kind of were, especially in those first 2-3 games of the season. I mean, we were talking about Old Dominion going, we were all, especially in the beginning of the year, we didn't know what this was going to be.
Sure.
We were like, this offense, how are they going to, figure out these kinks and these flaws to kind of, become a well-oiled machine, and it's just comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same thing but in a good way.
And the biggest thing to me is, look, the offensive line when it comes to pass blocking, still not great. Again, Sellers still had to escape a couple sacks on Saturday, but you're finding ways to be successful despite that, because that was the biggest hang-up earlier on in the year. It's like you can see the potential in this offense, but God, they can't protect Sellers to save their lives, and you can only go so far with that. So now that you're being able to play around that, and you are able to run the ball more effectively and good run blocking from your offensive line and your guys on the outside as well, now you have an offense that isn't necessarily a liability. And not that it was a complete liability earlier on in the season, but it's like, okay, defense is going to play well. If the offense can just give you 20 points, 24 points, you're going to have a chance to win. Now we're saying, okay, we have an offense we feel like is capable of scoring 25, 30, maybe 35 points in these remaining games, and the defense will take care of the rest.
Mm-hmm. And when you pair that with like the defensive kickstart we've seen in these last two games, I mean, against A&M, the two turnovers kind of to start the game really gave, the Gamecocks all the momentum in that win. And then even we saw last weekend, that strip sack from Kennard in the beginning, that was a huge turnover. That was a huge momentum builder just early on, and it set the stage for the offense to take command. And since, like we've just been talking about, Sellers surveying the field and how they were able to get going in this game, it set the field for them to go out and dominate.
And again, the offense has gotten a lot better these past 2 weeks when it comes to turning the ball over. Again, Sellers had that bad, the fumble early on in the game that set up Vanderbilt in really good territory about the 15-yard line, potentially going into score. And when you have a defense as good as Carolina's is, they're like, hey, we got you. You messed up. That's okay. We'll get the ball back, and we're fine. And they did. And again, end up running away with the 21-point victory on Saturday. This is, in my 2 years covering this team, this is probably the best I felt about the team overall, because everything is starting to click right now. And again, like Gamecock later brought up, you wonder what could have been against Alabama. You wonder what could have been against LSU. That's over and done with. You can't go back and change it now. What you can do is maybe, if including the bowl game, maybe get yourself 10 wins, which I think is an emphatic statement.
And you got to be excited, that AP ranking coming out. I believe 25 on the poll, correct?
They didn't make the AP top 25. I believe it in the coaches poll.
That's what it was.
I don't pay attention to those rankings. They don't mean anything. The only ranking that matters is the CFP top 25, which comes out tomorrow. And if Carolina's not in that tomorrow, I will be very shocked. I will say that much.
Well, considering when you're talking about Bama and LSU and what could have been, and pairing that up with all the other wins, it's like at this point, even if the season kind of doesn't end the way it's supposed to, it definitely transpired. Definitely not in a way that I would say this fan base was anticipating, because I know at the beginning of the season, people were just happy if this team was going to win 6 or 7 games, and now we're here talking about if they're going to win. The possibility of if they could have won 11 games and a real world where they really could win 9 games.
Well, and even with those games you let slip through your fingers, you do have the opportunity to have a really good season that, again, makes a huge statement about what this Beamer era certainly can be. Speaking of LSU and Alabama, they played on Saturday. It did not go well for one side.
Oh, no.
We'll dive into that and what else happened around the SEC coming up next. It is Reaction Monday. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro, WIS, hanging out here on the game.
Wide receivers over the left side, 2 tight ends as well. Rocket in the backfield. Blitz up the middle. Sellers down to Josh Simon at the goal line. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown, Josh Simon. 17 yards out.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro from WIS hanging out with you here on Your Reaction Monday. That was the second of Rocket Sanders' 3 touchdowns on Saturday. Or excuse me, that was Josh Simon's touchdown on Saturday, the one that Rocket Sanders did not score, helping South Carolina get that 28-7 victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores to improve to 6-3 on the year and allow themselves to get to bowl eligibility, which is a big mark for this team this year. And I know you weren't, doing our shows a year ago, but 5-7 last year, nearly missing out on a bowl game. That was embarrassing for this program in a lot of ways because at minimum, Carolina's program that they may not always be in the mix for the SEC championship game or be thought about as a national championship contender, but getting to a bowl game is the bare minimum for this program every single year, and they didn't do that last year. And there were a lot of questions in the offseason of, okay, was that a one-year thing? Or is that what this program is going to become? And they've shown you this year that was definitely a one-year thing as, again, they got a real good shot at maybe being a 9-10 win team this year.
Even if they don't kind of win out the rest of the year, I'd be upset if they didn't play a bowl game. This team's proved on so many accounts this year that they've been talented. Even in the game against Bama and LSU where they arguably should have won, I think they proved that they're a talented squad that would make for an entertaining case for a bowl game. And even if for some reason they don't punch that ticket this year, I'd be disappointed just because of the talent they've had and what they've proved this year.
Well, we know for sure they're going this year, getting to that 6-win mark, which is very big on Saturday. And again, I think they're better than Missouri. They should be able to beat Wofford, and we'll see what happens against Clemson in a couple weeks, but they're going to have a good chance in that one as well to maybe get to 9 wins before the end of the regular season. It is Reaction Monday. I want to get your thoughts as well. 803-404-6100 out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. Jim wants to weigh in. Jim, appreciate your call. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning, guys. Just some observations from Saturday's game. We've got some unsung heroes going on, man. Like, for instance, Free came in for nicked up Josiah Thompson. The guy did his part. He opened up a couple of lanes for Rocket to take off.
Mm-hmm.
At defensive back, DQ going out before the game started, and Peyton Williams coming in and playing the kind of game he played. He had two pass breakups. The guy played lights out, and when you think about it, if you pay attention to play counts, Carolina does not substitute in the defensive backfield. Those guys played the whole game for the most part. So I don't even know if Peyton has seen the field this year. So that's, you talk about coaching these guys up. And look at Oscar Attaway. He had a fine running game Saturday night. He had some nice pickups, subbing for Rocket. And that's important because when Rocket's not in there, the D focuses on Lenoris. And if you got a happy-go-lucky flying down the field, Oscar Attaway carrying the ball and picking up 8 yards, you got a whole different ball game now. I can name some other guys: J.T. Gear, Michael Goodwin, Brian Thomas Jr., Bacor Swain. Just my observation there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate your call there, Jim, and you're absolutely right. It isn't just the main guys, the stars of this defense out there making plays. When guys are getting their numbers called, and the entire team really, you mentioned Tree Babalati there coming in late in the game as well, and being the highest graded pass blocker for South Carolina on Saturday, which again is something they've struggled with this entire year. But a guy like Peyton Williams, who again DQ Smith out, at the defensive back spot, and Peyton Williams comes in, and we look at Pro Football Focus grades, was the highest graded defender for South Carolina on Saturday when it came to coverage, and that was the most he played. Yeah, he's a special teams guy, so he gets out on the field quite a bit over the course of the season, but in terms of actual defensive snaps, that was the most he had seen the entire year, and did a really good job in that game, including that critical pass deflection there on fourth down. But that's something that, when you look at one of the objectives of the offseason for South Carolina, was to build depth, was to get experience, was to bring guys in that are going to be able to play when their number's called, and they did a really good job of that. And again, Peyton Williams is a perfect example of that. Somebody, when you're asked to go out there and do something, you go out there and do it. And he did it well as everybody else, and the Brian Thomas Jr.'s and the Ben Martin Scotts, who, again, aren't the superstars of this defense, go out there and make plays when they need to. And again, that's how you end up walking out of, and I know it's Vanderbilt, but they're better than they usually are, walking out with a 3-touchdown win against a conference opponent on the road. That's impressive.
And I know another thing we've been talking about, Tyler, is, this offensive line and in terms of pass protection and all that stuff kind of going into this season and how that was going to look. And, whether it's how the line is kind of cohesively developed throughout the year or, you have these unsung heroes like Jim was kind of talking about coming in, making those extra blocks. I mean, it's clearly been helping this offense get going. And we saw it, not just help Rocket Sanders, but like Jim was saying, help guys like Attaway also kind of get going, get, 20, 30-yard gains, get the run game going, and then, not kind of leaving the entire scoring the scoring responsibilities all on Sellers. So I agree that I think, the offensive line and the blocking especially has kind of helped, develop throughout the season.
Plenty more to react to from Carolina and Vanderbilt as the day goes along. There were other games in the SEC, including 2 marquee games. One of those being Alabama and LSU, the primetime game, ABC, Saturday night in Death Valley. Alabama ran all over them. More specifically, Jalen Milroe, for the second year in a row, ran all over LSU. And we had pegged this as a de facto playoff elimination game. And you can almost kind of make the argument like, okay, well, if LSU plays Alabama tight and it's a last-second field goal or an overtime loss, then maybe LSU still has an argument to be made of, okay, maybe they're still alive in the grand scheme of things. You're getting waxed by 29 points at home, at night, in what's supposed to be one of the toughest environments, if not the toughest environment in college football. Sorry, LSU, your chance at pursuing a national championship's over.
I mean, this was one of many games this weekend that just proved you can't squeak by with just a good enough defense and a great offense, because if your great offense doesn't come and show up, then what's your defense going to make up for it, So it was interesting watching Jalen Milroe kind of put up Adrian Peterson 2012 numbers on the ground against this team. But, I mean, I would have killed to have him on my fantasy team this weekend,
So Brian Kelly addressed it after the game, and he basically said we couldn't stop the quarterback. And here's the problem. They had 2 weeks, right? They had a bye week to get ready for this game after coming off of a loss to Texas A&M where Marcel Reed came in and ran all over them. And coming away from that game, we famously talked about it, they said they didn't prepare for him. They said they were not preparing for the running quarterback that A&M brought to the table. So, okay, all right, fine. That's embarrassing. But now you got 2 weeks to prepare for what is a quarterback that's going to kill you on the ground if you're not ready for it. And it looked like they weren't prepared. Like, how does this happen 2 games in a row? It's embarrassing for LSU.
It was just kind of wild. They didn't. Alabama didn't even really need to throw the ball. Like Milroe, I think only threw for less than 110 yards.
109 because they just ran the ball down their throat. And again, when you look elsewhere, I mean, Jay Miller had a couple good runs here and there, but it was primarily just Jalen Milroe putting this team on his back and running at will.
Like when you can't stop one guy, I mean, what's the thought process? I guess. I'm thinking like they're going into this third quarter. You're down 21-6. Like you wouldn't try to fix anything, at least, especially they wouldn't try to make them pass.
Well, if you cannot stop him, if you cannot get enough pressure on him before he can escape the pockets, here's the thing: Jalen Milroe, when he's on the run, is probably the best athlete on the field. And if you cannot contain him when he's sitting back in the pocket, trying to look downfield to see what throws he can make, and he escapes, and good luck slowing him down. And they weren't able to do that on Saturday.
Well, I wouldn't even entirely knock LSU's secondary then on that front, because, I mean, if they don't even need to throw the ball, then, I mean, the secondary is kind of just sitting in the back of the field, tweedling their thumbs, watching the defensive line create holes for Milroe to kind of run right through them.
Secondary still has to make tackles, though, which was something that
they were.
I
guess they were evolving door this weekend, huh?
Yeah, no. Again, Jalen Milroe just completely ran over LSU en route to that convincing win. As Alabama, who again was a team that we haven't counted them out. We know they're certainly capable, but they weren't looking like themselves through the middle portion of the season. They had the bad second half against Georgia. They lost to Vanderbilt. They couldn't get out of their own way for a lot of the game against Tennessee. They regrouped, though. They're back and looking as strong as ever. And in college football, sometimes it can be about heating up at the right time. And Alabama looks primed to be hitting their stride heading into playoff time.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to come down to, making sure that they're kind of buttoned up through those last couple games of the season and not letting anything squeak. I mean, even if they drop one, I think as long as you get those last one or two games kind of ending the regular season, you can kind of get some good momentum going forward. But, it's going to really, like you said, they're just going to have to be hot at the right time.
By the way, LSU, 13 missed tackles in this game on Saturday against Alabama. That is not going to get it done against a team that runs the ball as effectively as Alabama does with Jalen Milroe. Again, it is Veterans Day. I want to say happy Veterans Day to all of the veterans out there. Myself, Terry Ford, going to be doing the halftime show from Hardee's, 496 Piney Grove Road today from 12 until 3. And then the owners of All American Heating and Air are going to be in with Jay and Elijah for the 3 o'clock hour of the postgame show, both of them veterans themselves. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Sam Spear from WIS hanging out with you on your Reaction Monday here on The Game.
I know he's watching, and he loved these type of games and big games, and I thought about him a lot this week, and I was like, man, if we win this thing, like, he'll be so happy, because he was always, like, last year after that, he's like, hey, we're going to get this turned around. I remember him saying after the game, we're going to get this thing turned around, and you're going to beat Georgia next year. And it was really kind of, we beat him in his style. Great defense, dominant defensive performance, some kind of mushy offense and field goals, and so he's happy about that performance.
Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro along with you on your Reaction Monday here on the game. Lane Kiffin, head coach of Ole Miss, talking about his father, who of course passed away before the season started, and how proud he would have been that victory that the Ole Miss Rebels had over Georgia on Saturday in another dominant performance, similar to what Alabama did to LSU on Saturday, 28-10. But that doesn't even tell the story of just how badly Ole Miss beat Georgia on Saturday. Carson Beck fighting for his life, under duress the entire time, threw more interceptions in this game as he's been struggling with this entire season, and just all around an ugly game for Georgia and a thorough, dominant game for Ole Miss.
This, to me, was kind of like South Carolina's Texas A&M win for Ole Miss, at least, just because of the roller coaster I feel like they've kind of had for their season. So I feel like this was kind of a nice little cherry on top of a chocolate milkshake with whipped cream.
Well, and, Kiffin referenced last year's game where Ole Miss went on the road to Georgia on what, up to this point, was the best team in Ole Miss history and got shellacked by over 30 points. And again, they did not look like they belonged in the same league as Georgia that year. And that was a very good Georgia team last year. And that was kind of the catalyst for what they did this offseason. They looked at their team last year and said, okay, we got to get tougher. We got to get more physical. We got to get better in the trenches. We got to improve in a lot of areas, and they went out in the offseason with the NIL money that they had, and they made the roster better, a roster that's capable of playing for a national championship or at least being in the college football playoff. And if they can play like that, like they did on Saturday, there may not be anybody in the country that can beat them because they're efficient on offense. They got weapons everywhere, and even without their weapons on Saturday, they were still effective on offense. That defensive pass rush, we saw it here against Carolina. It's nasty. They were on Carson Beck and what is traditionally a good Georgia offensive line the entire game. Forced interceptions, forced turnovers, and it just made it look ugly.
It just, it was funny it was nice to see the Ole Miss defense make Carson Beck look like every New York Jets quarterback since 2018. But it really, I think, freed up the space for Jackson Dart to not have, the greatest game of all time. Granted, he had a great, quarterback passer rating, but, I mean, he only threw for about 200 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he still threw for a pick, but I think it kind of, seeing the defense, that was a homecoming, I feel like, for the defense, especially pressuring Beck like that.
Yeah, well, it was a huge game, obviously, there, and again, they were without Trey Harris, their leading receiver. Henry Paris Jr. was out at the running back spot, so they were down a couple key guys on offense. But again, they did enough in that game with the defense playing the way they did. And here's the thing. This game started off perfectly for Georgia. They intercepted Jackson Dart on the first drive of the game and converted a fourth down to score a touchdown, go up 7-0 early. At that point in time, I'm thinking, okay, this is one of those games that Georgia, big game against a ranked opponent, goes out there and probably dominates, if not leads the entire time, and then it just didn't happen. Georgia, in the second half, you just kept waiting and waiting. Okay, they're going to score a touchdown, they're going to cut it down to a one-score lead, and then we're going to have a tight game down at the end, and they make it look a whole lot better, and it just never happened because Carson Beck was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks. He was never comfortable in this entire game, and credit to Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss team because they had the perfect game plan to contain this Georgia offense, and they executed it perfectly.
And, maybe that play, the defense on the sideline watching that all happen was that kick in the butt that they needed to go, okay, we're not letting up one play, one drive, nothing. Well, and sometimes that's all it takes.
And Ole Miss is a team that had its back up against the wall. They'd already suffered 2 losses. They lost to Kentucky in an upset. They lost to LSU in that overtime game. They have no margin for error. Again, we think a 3-loss team in the SEC is not going to be able to get in the college football playoff. They could not afford to lose another game. And, as some of the players referenced after the game, they've been in playoff mode for the past couple weeks because they know they can't afford to lose anymore. And now this puts Georgia essentially in playoff mode the rest of the year. They got Tennessee this upcoming weekend. They've got to go play Georgia Tech, who we'll get to in a moment, at the end of the regular season. I don't think they're going to Atlanta, but I still think they have a shot at making the college football playoff if they can win out, which right now is easier said than done.
Right. And, we've been talking all morning about, heating up at the right time. I mean, this is exactly that, heating up at the right time. Second week of November, you're coming out playing a juggernaut in Georgia. I mean, anytime you come away holding them only to 10 points and you're dropping nearly a 30 burger on them, I mean, heating up at the right time is the best way to say it.
One team that finally slipped and fell on Saturday was the previously unbeaten Miami Hurricanes. They went into Bobby Dodd Stadium, and this happened.
Game here in this drive at some point in time. Can you make the plays before Cam Ward makes you pay? Only a three-man rush. The pocket collapsing though. Ward buying time. Hit from behind. The ball pops out. Georgia Tech's got it. Romello Height with the strip sack.
Georgia Tech with strip sack of Cam Ward in the final couple minutes to preserve the 28-23 victory over, again, the previously unbeaten and number 4 Miami Hurricanes, as the last undefeated team in the ACC does end up falling. And here's the thing. Miami's played tight games this entire year. They won controversially late against Virginia Tech. They had to come back against Cal on the road a couple weeks back. They've been playing with fire the entire year. You knew they were going to slip up at some point, and that finally ended up happening on Saturday. If I just needed to tell you one stat before the game, tell you how this one was going to go, Georgia Tech ran for 271 yards. They could not be stopped on the ground. This isn't a great Miami defense, but they shouldn't have given up that many yards on the ground. Credit to Brent Key and Georgia Tech. They went in there and took it from them.
I was saying this a little bit earlier when we were talking about LSU and Bama, but, I mean, this game was even more of that example I was trying to allude to earlier, where a good enough defense is not going to bail you out every time just because you have a superstar offense. When you look at how Cam Ward played in this game, I mean, especially if you just look at how he played on paper, he had a great game, 348, 3 touchdowns. If you watch the highlights, he was making plays the entire game, like 20, 30-yard errand. And I think the first score of the game was a 70-yard touchdown pass.
Yep.
He was balling the entire game, and the game-losing turnover he had wasn't necessarily even his fault. So the defense kind of put him in the position to have to kind of play hero ball the entire game, and that's why I'm not even putting this loss on Cam Ward's fault, like on his back. I mean, he kind of had the team on his back quite literally the entire game, and because the defense, let the Georgia Tech's run game kind of open up so early on, I mean, they just kept running the ball down their throat, and they seemed kind of helpless.
Biggest key factor in this game is Miami failing on 3 4th downs deep in Georgia Tech territory. Once at the Georgia Tech 23, once at 39, and once at the Georgia Tech 28. You can't convert those, you're going to have a tough time winning, and they certainly did on Saturday, despite the fact that Cam Ward, for the most part, outside of that fumble at the end of the game, did play how we kind of would expect him to play.
And this was, I think, like the 5th or 6th close call that this defense has had. I mean, kind of just talking about the game against Cal, where they had to dig back from, I think, one of 5 double-digit deficits they've had to face throughout this entire season. Virginia Tech, they got bailed out. Louisville, they didn't know if they were going to win that game either. And then I'm pretty sure Duke was pretty close up until kind of the 4th quarter as well.
Yep.
So, and even the Boston College game. I mean, there are so many times Cam Ward has bailed this mediocre defense out of mediocrity.
Well, for Miami, the goals are still ahead of them. They got to run the table to make the ACC championship game and can still make the playoff, but I don't know how confident I am in them going too far with the way this defense is playing.
It's making Cam Ward's Heisman case a lot stronger because he's got to play a lot more hero ball than he would have to need to. But if they keep relying on that, it was only gonna last so long. And I think this weekend was that tipping point.
It is the extra point on your reaction Monday. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our friends over at Integrated Media. Up next, it's time for the oddities of college football, and oh boy, do I have a doozy for you that happened in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday night. We'll hit that coming up next. is the Extra Point. He's Sam Shapiro from WIS. Tyler Head, Reaction Monday here on the game.
Missouri drops eight. Arnold hit. Ball's loose. It is scooped up by the Tigers. Zion Young with the scoop and score.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler and Sam Shapiro along with you for a few more minutes here on the Extra Point. Time for the oddities of college football, the weird things that happened around this great sport that we love on Saturday, and perhaps no weirder place to be than Columbia, Missouri. Late night game. This was the 7:45 kick on the SEC network, and I'd been watching LSU and Alabama. Game was one-sided, So I started to go back and watch Carolina and Vanderbilt just to kind of review the game again. And I had this game on, well, like with the sound off, just kind of on, keeping an eye on it. And I see Oklahoma score a touchdown to tie the game at 16. Late in the fourth quarter, hadn't been a whole lot of offense in that game. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Might be going towards overtime here. And then immediately after that, Oklahoma gets a scoop and score touchdown to put themselves up 23-16. Okay, interesting. Drew Pine, the backup quarterback from Missouri, immediately drives them down the field and gets a touchdown, tie the game at 23. And then right after that, second play of the next drive, Jackson Arnold, ball comes flying out of his hand, and that's what you heard, the scoop and score. The game is already the 30-23 win in the most chaotic 3 minutes I've seen in a while.
It definitely, this roller coaster you call college football, I think that the roller coasters that are college football, that's textbook definition right there.
Just completely nuts for a game that was a snoozer for a lot of it. Just a lot of field goals, and again, these aren't the most dynamic offenses in the world. Man, what a wild ending to an otherwise uneventful game.
Well, I initially, when I was watching the highlights, I didn't look at the clock or what quarter it was, so I'm thinking, oh, this was kind of like stretched out throughout the entire game. And when I went back and noticed, I was kind of like, oh, the whole game was pretty much just in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, that entire last 3 minutes feel like it took an hour and probably took a couple years off the life of some people out there in the Oklahoma fan base, that's for sure. So we talked about this going into the weekend. LSU famously used to have Mike the Tiger on the sidelines. They aren't able to do that anymore. The effect that it has on him, prevents them from doing that. So they went out and got Omar Bradley, the random Tiger from Florida, to be on the sidelines on Saturday against Alabama. There were a lot of people in the LSU fan base that were not happy about this because that's not Mike the Tiger, and they were afraid it was going to bring some bad luck. It did. They lost by 29 points. I don't think Omar Bradley's going to be making any more appearances on the sidelines at Tiger Stadium, and it certainly didn't intimidate Alabama if that's what they were going for.
Well, yeah, and if they're debating if it's going to, involve animal cruelty or you're subjecting the Tiger to, being in a not safe environment, not around a lot of people, then it's like, why are you going to try to conjure up all this bad juju if it's already not existent, right?
Well, it was certainly bad luck, and again, I don't think they're going to be asking him to do that ever again. The Ole Miss Georgia game, again, this one ends up being dominated by Ole Miss. Perhaps one of the most notable things that happened, a delay in the second quarter. A squirrel gets loose on the field at Vaught Hemingway Stadium and was very tough to contain. I mean, they legitimately had to stop the game while he runs over, I think, to the Georgia sideline. They're trying to, corner him behind, the Gatorade table or whatever. And it's funny, I saw somebody bring this up. Ole Miss had been the one in the most trouble for faking injuries this year to slow the game down. Well, now you can't do that anymore, so Lane Kiffin just release some squirrels. Get a delay that way.
Well, don't cringe, but it was nutty how long they took to finally catch that squirrel and start the game back up again.
It was almost like a comedy routine.
Yeah.
Right? They're just chasing after the squirrel. I remember when I was at Georgia, I think we had a game delay because a cat got on the field.
I don't know how they get through the stadium security.
Well, I mean, a squirrel can climb on anything, so it's not the most unfeasible thing that it could get on the field.
It's going to Tobey Maguire that? Scale the wall?
Yeah, I mean, and climb walls and run across wires and stuff. So
use some trees?
Yeah, it's not insane. It's just we rarely see them get on the field and cause a delay. Within this same game, so again, Ole Miss picks up the victory over number 3 Georgia. Fans want to storm the field, right? They stormed a little too quickly because after Georgia failed on its last fourth down and turned the ball over, the fans stormed the field with 16 seconds left. And they had to corral the people back off the field to kneel out the clock with 16 seconds to go. One of the funnier things I've seen in a field storming.
Imagine if that happened at Williams-Brice. That's all. I just feel like it would have just been so much of a bigger deal made than it would have needed to be. But do they get fined any more than the?
Not. I mean, they're going to get fined in general for storming the field. But no, I mean.
During the game?
I'm amazed that they got the people off the field as quickly as they did. And that's the funny part looking at the last play of the game. They literally just have fans standing on the sidelines because you can't corral them all back up in the stands. All right, stand over here. We're going to kneel the clock out, and then you can run on the field. because you're not going to be able to hold them at bay at that point in time. But it's funny to look at that and see how that ended up. And credit to the people there at Vaughn Hemingway for clearing off the field enough to get that final play in.
I'm glad they were able to clear the field just because the example they would have set if they didn't clear the field and they just went, oh, all right, the game's over.
You got in the game. I don't know what you can do if you can't get people off the field. That's a bizarre situation.
Yeah. I don't know either.
That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, as your Reaction Monday rolls along here on The Game. 11 a.m. on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Chris currently in the Herndon Chevrolet studios. I believe Wes is caught in parade traffic. Want to say Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there, but he may be joining us more fashionably late than usual.
I can confirm there is a good bit of traffic. It took me normally take a good path from 26 down Marion Street, and it was everybody else had the same idea today.
Probably so. I have to get out to our remote at Hardee's at Piney Grove in an hour, so hopefully I can escape efficiently. We'll see how that goes, I guess.
Big weekend for the Gamecocks. That was fun, huh?
That was, I've said this a couple times this morning already. What they did against A&M was a big statement from the standpoint of you finally got over the hump of all those consecutive losses to ranked teams, again, going back pretty much 2 years, and you did it on national stage and ABC primetime Saturday night, the whole 9 yards, where people took notice, saying, okay, this Gamecock team is legit. Defense has been legit. Offense had their best performance up to that point of the entire year. Now go on the road, and yeah, it's Vanderbilt, but there's a much better Vanderbilt team than we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, and back it up. And they did just that. Outside of the third quarter, Carolina dominated this game pretty much on all fronts and won.
And it was, scoreless after one.
Yep.
But you kind of got the sense, South Carolina had kind of outplayed Vandy at that point. You kind of worried, I think, early in the game, and man, there's a lot to dive into here, but you kind of worried early on if you were playing a little bit into Vandy's hands, and I'll unpack that and explain it, because obviously that didn't end up happening. But yeah, it was a Wes used the phrase this morning on our podcast, workmanlike. I agree with that. You just went and handled business. And now you've got this switch that this team has flipped since that Alabama game. A lot of the players have talked about it, the coaches have talked about it, of kind of enough is enough. And that's kind of a mental aspect to the game. That's only one part of it, but they have found something, obviously, because I don't have the numbers in front of me. Tyler, you probably have them. They are not just beating teams. They are thoroughly beating teams. And you look at what they did on the road against Oklahoma. You got that number?
Well, I was going to say, let's go back to one of what our buy or sells was on Friday, where I said in the A&M game, they exceeded every statistical category on offense by average in that game. Points scored, rush offense, pass offense, total offense, all those kind of things. Nearly did it again on Saturday. The only thing they came short of was total points scored, average on the season 30.5 coming in, only scored 28 in that one. But everything else, rush offense, pass offense. So we'll get into the specifics of that as the show goes along. They exceeded those. So again, we talk about in November, one side of the ball just seems to find an extra gear these past couple of years, and it's very clear it's the offense this year.
Yeah, and they you mentioned earlier this is not the same Vandy team. I totally agree. This one may not get the play as, beating an A&M or, because A&M was a top 10 team, but this is a good Vandy team. They have gotten teams into the fourth quarter. The games that they have lost have been fourth quarter losses. They've been narrow margins. Texas, who is, a near lock for the college football playoff, it appears.
Yep.
Escaped Nashville with the 3-point win. Bama took a loss, and Vandy scored 40 points against Alabama. They scored 24 against Texas. This is a great quarterback in Pavia who's tough. Carolina held him to 7, and we're sitting here nitpicking. Well, why didn't they have somebody in the middle of the field when he ran? That's where you want to be. Yeah. You want to be nitpicking that, and so I thought early in the game, Carolina puts together a good first drive. Vandy ends up doing exactly what Vandy wants to do, make you earn it. You stall out, you miss a field goal, you turn the ball over. But from that point, once the defense made a play for you, got it back, Carolina took over, and they were able to just, in all three, it's just like Clark Lee said, a three-phase butt kicking.
Wait a minute. Let's let the man himself tell you just how thoroughly of a butt kicking this was.
Obviously, that was a tough night, tough result. I first want to credit Shane and South Carolina. I thought they obviously were the better team, the more physical team tonight. That was 3-phase ass kicking, and credit to them, and they earned it.
Wes, you got a front row seat to that now that you've joined us after your traffic fiasco.
Let me just say, there is a parade going on. Was not aware of that.
Yeah,
I am now.
It is Veterans Day. There's Veterans Day parade. So if you're coming into the city, be mindful of that, and navigate accordingly. But you got to be there on Saturday to see this. Bit of a rainy, nasty day, but I'm sure the Gamecock contingent, which showed up pretty well there, was pretty happy on Saturday night in downtown.
Yeah, lots of Gamecocks out and about, man. And if we have time, I want to talk about the game itself, obviously. If we have time, we'll talk about the Vandy atmosphere.
Lack thereof.
But we got a lot to get to. And so, I thought the more you kind of maybe go back and listen to Clark Lee and rewatch the game as well, South Carolina, just as the game progressed, enforced their will on Vandy. And, early on, it felt to me like I'm sitting there going, man, is Vandy going to sort of get the identity they want from this game? And they were able to sort of keep South Carolina for much of the game having to kind of dink and dunk down the field. It's playing out exactly the way they want in terms of, bend but don't break, keep the clock rolling, limit possession, shorten the game. But ultimately, I think the thing that has stood out about Carolina the last few weeks, and especially the last 2 weeks on offense, is it's really not been about the opponent. It's been about South Carolina enforcing their will and doing what they want to do. And, that to me is what really, really good football teams, that's what great football teams do, is it's not that you're winning a game because your opponent had an off night, or you're winning a game because, maybe it's just a great matchup for you. You're winning a game because regardless of opponent, you just are enforcing your will, your game plan, your identity on the opponent. And that was the case in this one. I thought Clark Lee made a great point. South Carolina moved the chains at times, kind of in those little 1 to 2 yard situations where, maybe the difference in getting a stop versus an offense staying on the field is kind of whether your ball carrier, whether it's Lenoris, whether it's Rocket. I thought Attaway had some nice runs. I thought the receivers ran well after the catch. How many times did Carolina just sort of push the pile or fall forward to get a first down? There's one play where Lenoris is hit in the backfield, and he basically falls backwards for a first down. I mean, those are the plays that, Clark Lee said, hey, we want to make those plays. And in this case, it was South Carolina.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think what might have been one of the most pivotal parts of this entire game, after Vanderbilt scored their first touchdown of the game, made it 14-7, Carolina gets the ball back, facing a 3rd and 5 at midfield, handoff to Rocket, gets hit about 2 to 3 yards short of the line to gain, and pushes the pile, like you said, for that first down. They proceed to drive down the field. That was the same drive where Sellers dove, and it could have been a touchdown. They rolled him short, and then Rocket runs it in for the touchdown. They go back up 14. So at a time where it seemed like the momentum could have swung back in Vanderbilt's favor, if they got a touchdown and were able to stop Carolina on that drive, you have a critical 3rd down where you push the pile and get that first down, and the game continues to trend in your direction, and obviously you end up winning that game by 3 touchdowns. Like you said, that to me was probably the most pivotal, if not the most pivotal point of the game for South Carolina.
Yeah, and even I'll reverse one drive back for you where Carolina, they have Lenoris hit in the backfield, and you just came off of I think it was a hold, so you're 1st and 20. Really, Vandy struggled to kind of back you up all game long, right? And you've kind of played ahead of the chains for much of the game. You're sitting there, you're going, all right, Vandy at halftime had to be feeling pretty good, because they had been, I would say, it felt like they were dominated, but were only down by 7. And so they're probably going, hey, this is the type of game we love. We're just going to get this thing to the fourth quarter.
They're a second half team.
They're saying, let's keep the clock moving. And, you had a missed field goal. You had a forced fumble. You had a stop. And then, you start the drive 1st and 20. what happens? Lenoris gets out of a tackle, breaks contain, flicks the ball down the field, 45 yards in the air, effortlessly, hits Jared Brown. You take off like that. There's 50 yards right there of the drive that you've just knocked out. Then you have a 1-yard run, and the very next play, Rocket breaks off his 33-yard touchdown run, and you go up 14-0. So there were, as with any game, even with, it was kind of a dominant win for South Carolina, even a 3-touchdown win, there are these plays within the game that you can look back on and be like, from a Carolina standpoint, hey, we made that play. These are plays Vandy's going, man, if we just made that play, maybe we could have kept it closer. Maybe we could have kept it tighter. And the Gamecocks right now, guys, are just making those plays. And I think the exciting thing for Carolina fans right now is that it does not feel flukish at all. This is not a batted pass goes your way. This is not the opponent just makes some major mistake. Carolina is running the football. They're getting really good play from Lenoir Sellers, and defense travels, man. Like, they are staying very consistent on defense.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with the defense, so we'll do that maybe next segment. But just another kind of zoomed out, little bit big picture thoughts still in this game is that, I think you did all the things that were keys in this game. You knew you had to contain Pavia. You knew he was going to make some plays, which he did. He had the touchdown run. His ability to scramble out of trouble, throw on the run is very impressive. I mean, I came away even more impressed with him. He didn't really have a good game, but I was still.
He kept things alive.
He kept it in play for them for as long as he could. If Wes Mitchell or Chris Clark or Tyler Heads playing quarterback in that game, well, they'd be in big trouble. But pick your quarterback, right? Like, put in just a replacement level kind of quarterback in that game, and I think it's ugly very quickly for them. You contain Pavia. You did have the turnover early. Y'all know I'm going to harp on turnovers. But your defense got it back for you. That ended up being even. And then Wes just ran through a bunch of them. The explosive plays, that's what you needed, I think, to prevent Vandy from playing that defensive style of the bend and break, but don't break defense that they want to play. So I think all your keys you really hit on in this game.
Take a deeper look at that defense coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along in your Reaction Monday here on The Game.
Our friends at Integrated Media can help you enjoy modern conveniences at your home. Choose Michael, Nathan, and the team at Integrated Media for smart home installation services right here in the Midlands. Do you want to transfer your home into a smart home where you can control all your lights, devices, thermostat, security and cameras, everything from a touch of a button on your smartphone, whether you're at home and just looking for convenience, or you're away and want to make sure, hey, I want to save on my power bill. I want to be able to check in on my home security. You can do that as well. If you're interested in upgrading your home theater system, making your entertainment room the place to be, Integrated Media can do it for you. They can source the equipment for you that you need. You don't have to go to the big box stores, and they can install it professionally. They do a great job. They've been to my home. They've been to Wes Mitchell's home. Check them out, integratedmediainc.com, or give them a call at 803-948-8327.
They need to get to the Carolina 28-yard line. 3 seconds left on the play clock. Pavia calling for the football. Snap it back. Carolina backs out. Pavia thrown in the flat. Tipped up in the air and knocked away. Should have been picked off by Williams. And it's just an incomplete pass. And the Gamecocks take over on downs.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Westminster and Chris Clark along with you on your Reaction Monday. That was the call on one of the key fourth down stops in the game in the third quarter. Peyton Williams with the pass deflection from Diego Pavia and Bakari Swain in the back end knocking the ball away as well to help get the ball back for South Carolina as Vandy was driving down the field after Carolina had made it a 21-7 game. And huge shout out to Peyton Williams getting thrust into action on Saturday with DQ being ruled out just for the game and going out there and being one of the better players on defense out of all the stars on Saturday. I
think Wes told me earlier he was one of the top 4 graded PFF guys on the team.
He was the highest graded coverage guy on the team.
Yeah, so, Beamer, it was kind of funny after the game. He was like, it was just one of those kind of games where Clint Haggard, the trainer, comes up and tells him, hey, DQ's out. And he's like, what? Like, it's not even on your radar as a coach. Hey, your starting safety's out. Good luck. And Peyton's a guy that missed last season, has played on special teams this year, really, and that's about it. And, like you said, huge credit to him. Huge credit to the, Torian Gray, just continues. You just kind of trust him at this point, to develop guys. And Peyton Williams didn't just give you kind of replacement level, like, let's just tread water here. Like, he made some plays for you. Did a really nice job. That was a big play. Bakari following up that play was big as well to finish the play off and knock it away. But it was a full team effort. Wes and I earlier were talking when we were doing GC Live. You just try to go through, the defense played well. You hold Vandy to their lowest point total by far of the season. That's a great effort. Then you start diving in, well, who were the standouts? And you could just list tons of guys in this lineup at all levels.
Yeah, who would you not list on defense? Like, the entire defense is just playing so well right now together that, some days are going to be – some games are going to be one guy's day. Maybe the next game will be another guy's day to kind of shine and make the biggest plays that get spotlighted. But for the most part, I think if you drill it down, they're just playing so well at all 3 levels of this defense, and they're just getting so much pressure on – opponents. And that, to me, you're talking quarterback, but Vandy was so just built on staying ahead of the sticks, so to speak, and getting themselves in makeable third downs. And I thought Carolina did a really good job of stopping the run. Vandy hit a few pass plays on them where you kind of just tip your cap to Pavia. And so some of it was a little bit, I would say, just what they were doing schematically, and he hit a couple. Every defense is going to have a weakness in terms of, like, where there are holes in a defensive, pass scheme. Well, for the most part, though, they're just getting win after win up front. They're forcing Pavia to have to run around. He's being chased. He's being hit. You're kind of stacking the hits on the quarterback. And, this was Vandy's, by far, worst offensive performance of the year and worst overall performance. But I think it goes back to the fact that Carolina forced that on them. It was not just, they played poorly. It was that Carolina has forced them to play poorly, and this defense is just consistently holding teams under what their sort of baseline performance is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Carolina earned it. You look at, Vandy had the turnover. Well, that's because Kyle Kennard, again, beat his guy one-on-one, knocked the ball out, then said, well, I guess I'll have to do it myself, recovered the ball as well. You think about, like, a lot of the plays, there are a lot of plays where Pavia impresses you, but the difference is you go, man, that's a great effort by him, but Carolina prevented another big play. He had the one where he, some near misses where the pressure's just so extreme that he's got to throw the ball up, and sometimes he finds a guy somehow, but he sails it just over. You look at the one play where he scrambles out early in the game, throws an absolute dart on the run, couldn't have handed it to him better, to Eli Stowers, the tight end. Demetrius Knight has man-to-man coverage, knocks the ball away. You look at the fourth downs, right? because of the pressure that has built up all game, Pavia makes the throw on fourth down, the play we just went over. Peyton Williams knocking it away, Swain finishing it off. Bam Martin Scott I think that was a 4th and 2. Late in the game, great play design. You get a free rusher with Bam Scott. He knocks the ball away. So, Pavia kept them alive. I mean, this might have been an 8-sack game for Carolina. 9 it might have been like the Oklahoma game, if not for Pavia. As it were, they got, 2 or 3? They had, I think, 17 pressures in the game per PFF.
19.
19.
Yep.
I mean, just a great top-to-bottom performance.
Well, and the names that you mentioned there, Bam Martin Scott, Brian Thomas Jr. with hits on the quarterback as well. When you look at this defense from an outsider's perspective, you'd say, okay, the stars are Kennard, Stewart, Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams, Nicky Manwari. It's that second level of guys that, no disrespect to them in saying that, it's just that next tier of guys on the roster, the depth chart here, that went out there and making the plays on Saturday, in addition to the Kennards, in addition to the Manwaris. It just shows you, and this is a big key in the offseason for Beamer and company, of how deep this defense really is.
TJ Sanders, boys, I think is going to make himself a lot of money.
And again, they were thin on the defensive line on Saturday without, Jules and Nick Barrett, and you wouldn't have known any different, really.
And they all, let's go. Stewart was on one wheel at times. TJ got banged up. Tonka got banged up. That one play, you look down, they had forced a throwaway, and you look down, and it's like there's been a car accident. Like, there's like two, Kennard had run into
Boogie came off at one point,
Boogie came, like all of them, and they're still, you're like, oh, man, is this going to affect how they play? No. They're just out there just still getting after it. It's crazy.
How many, if I'm Carolina, man, I got some recruiting ammo now to the job that they've done developing these guys. D. Knight, the progress he has made, let's not forget, this is D. Knight's third school. And, he started his career at Georgia Tech. And so now he's doing it at the highest level in the SEC. And, he's played his way. But I think he's going to be a day 2 pick. I think he's played his way into that range. And so now you're looking, you're going to look at this thing big picture and be like, man, you're going to be losing a lot of guys from this defense after this season. But I do think there's a blueprint here in terms of looking at the portal and saying, hey, guys, if you want to come in and take your game to the next level, look at what Kennard is doing compared to the rest of his career to this point. And I think the job this defensive staff has done developing players and identifying players has been really, really impressive. And we're just seeing it all come together. Just very few weaknesses on this defense. I think we maybe wondered, all right, are they like a pass rush defense? But maybe an A&M comes in and just says, oh, no, we're going to just take the air out of the ball, run the ball right at them, and we're going to out-physical them. No, that did not happen at all. Just very few weaknesses on this defense.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you can look at it really is all 3 levels of the defense you can point to that development, because some of like Dylan Stewart, right? He's a 5-star, but you can even look and say, hey, Sterling Lucas got this guy ready to play and have that big, not just play, but have that big of an impact in year 1. But Kyle Kennard has been very vocal about, hey, it's my hard work plus Sterling Lucas. O.D. Fortune, 3-star guy out of high school. I'll fully admit, I didn't think he was going to be this good. I thought he could be a starter level guy. He's an NFL guy. You look at Torian Gray, the work he's done in the secondary, developing, a guy like Nick Ebenwari, what they've done at linebacker, defensive tackles with guys that have stuck around and been developed in the program. So you've got, you're going to have a really good chance to break the record for Carolina draft picks all time this year. And a lot of those are going to come from the offensive side of the football. So it's definitely
defensive side.
Yeah, defensive side of the football. the vast majority of them. So you definitely have a good story to sell, and you're going to need that this offseason to replace a lot of these guys.
We'll dive into the the offense, get some of your thoughts as well as is a Reaction Monday here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on the game. Tyler Head once again for our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you've not downloaded Underdog yet, what are you waiting for? You're watching sports anyway. Why not make some money while doing so? You can create entries with all your favorite sports and mix and match across your favorites and win real cash prizes and turn your sports opinions into real money. Underdog also has double flex where you can even take a couple of L's and still end up with a winning entry. Underdog RSUs as well assures you that you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Tonight on Monday Night Football, I've got Cooper Kupp lower than 6.5 receptions as his Rams are in action. Discounts can also get you adjusted projections on certain player stats to give you a better shot at a big victory. Download the app and sign up with the promo code THEGAME1075 and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's promo code THEGAME1075. Must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org.
Fantastic. Just making good decisions, poised back there, confident, running the ball, the physicality that he ran with. When he did get some pressure, being able to scramble and make plays, throwing the ball, the play to JB, Jared Brown was huge over there to start the second half, and the throw to Josh on the touchdown. He just continues to get better, and he's a fantastic player who gets better each and every week.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris here with you on your Reaction Monday. Coach Beamer after the game talking about Lenore Sellers' great performance against Vanderbilt and minus the fumble that Carolina did end up getting back just after that. A pretty all-around efficient game, 14 of 20 through the air, 238 yards, ran pretty well as well. And as Beamer alluded to, another couple of additions of using his athleticism and magic to get out of what would be sacks and launch some balls down the field. I look back to what he did last weekend or the previous weekend against A&M, where he put together at that point in time his best 4 quarters of football. You say, okay, is this what Lenore Sellers is going to be going forward? Has he finally started clicking in all the right areas, and this offense is going to start moving along like that? And I think Saturday backed up what we saw the week before against A&M, and you're feeling good about what Sellers is going to be able to do over these last 3 weeks, and then a ball game coming up at the end of the year.
Yeah, he's playing really well, guys, and I don't know if we talk enough about how much the structure of the defense you're facing each week affects what you're going to be able to do on offense. And I think you see kind of a completely opposite style from Vandy compared to what we saw from A&M. And, Vandy is not a team that you're going to probably be able to get a lot of QB runs to where you feel like you can break one off for a huge gain. And, we saw A&M sort of get themselves in that spot last week where they were able to, Carolina was able to take advantage of all the man coverage that they play. And then, so this week, you get yourself in a situation where if you're Vandy, you're dropping back into these zone coverages and you're saying, all right, keep all eyes on Lenoris. Don't let him take off. Don't let him hurt us with his legs. And he was still able to hurt you, a little bit in terms of like those little small gains that a lot of times go overlooked where you're just saying, hey, he got positive yardage. He kept us a little bit on track in terms of downs and distances. To me, the key as this game progressed was scramble drill. It was Lenoris knowing, hey, they're dropping back into these zone coverages. The longer I can keep the play live, the more opportunity there is for my guys to settle into what becomes a bigger and bigger space within the zone coverage. And Lenoris was able to deliver some of those balls. Also, I thought just the underneath throws. As good as he was last week, we saw him leave a couple out there what should have been the easier throws he would have made last week. And, maybe they're a little wide, maybe they're a little short. South Carolina attacked the edges in the passing game. Quick throws to the flat. Again, you're talking zone coverage. A lot of times, zone coverage, you're dropping those cornerbacks back. Make those easy throws in the flat. Keep your offense moving forward. That's what they did. He had a lot of velocity on those throws. He had accuracy with those throws. And I don't think it was as flashy of a performance as last week, but I think you could actually sit there and make a compelling case that it was just as impressive as last week because it's just a different type of defense that you're going up against.
Yeah, the reason that everybody's been so excited about Sellers is because, he can make special plays for you, like, taking a design run and running 75 yards for a touchdown against an SEC team like we saw early in the season, or what we saw on Saturday night, which is escape from a sack, roll out, keep your eyes downfield, and flick a ball, 40, 50 yards in the air to an open receiver on a scramble drill. Escaping multiple sacks against A&M, being a threat in the run game to the extent that South Carolina can now open up the playbook and say, we're going to run triple option concepts or RPO concepts where the quarterback can also be involved in the run game and be a threat. So it makes South Carolina a lot tougher to defend. As Sellers has progressed, he's added in. It's almost like he's working backwards because he's adding in maybe the more basic plays, right? Like we saw the flair for the dramatic and some of those just plays where he's getting by on sheer athleticism. We saw those early in the season. We're still seeing them. But now it's about him getting more comfortable in the pocket, knowing when to bail, when to stay in, knowing when to take the underneath throw as opposed to forcing things. So he's kind of mixing the basics of playing quarterback at a high level, which there's nothing basic about it. It's still really hard to do against this schedule. He's taking those things and then adding in what he can do athletically. And you're getting the product that you see now, which is he's a really, really good player. And I think he's just going to keep getting better too.
Help if I turn my microphone on. It is a Reaction Monday. I want to get your thoughts as well. 803-404-6100. Head out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. Brian wants to weigh in. Brian, appreciate your call. What's on your mind today?
Hey, guys. In the game Saturday, I tell you what, I can't remember another back that can do what Rocket does. I've never seen somebody be at almost full speed and then just stop and change direction. I mean, it's really, once he gets caught up in the line of scrimmage, that was amazing to me, how he could just stop and kind of pause and wait, and then he picked his lane. That impressed me really, really a lot. And second thing I wanted to ask y'all, I know y'all touched on players that we're going to lose. Okay, Rocket, we lose. What's the situation with Harbor? Is he a redshirt freshman, or did he lose his redshirt?
Appreciate the call there, Brian. Real quick, first of all, yes, Rocket, another phenomenal game backing up what he did against A&M last week and forced another 5 missed tackles, had 108 yards after contact on the ground on Saturday, and is the Rocket. We've been waiting to see, consistently, before the season began. Obviously had the great game against LSU, but was nicked up after that, and is obviously going to be a big part of this offense, doing what they hopefully continue to do over these next couple weeks. And in reference, Rocket most likely going to be going to the NFL after this season, and Harbor played most of last year, so he's a true sophomore, if I'm thinking correctly, right?
Yeah, Harbor played a ton last year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, what wasn't necessarily as productive as probably he or a lot of people.
And he had a solid game on Saturday, by the way.
Yeah, he did. He really did. And I've seen a guy who could cut at full speed like that in a Gamecock uniform, but there hadn't been many of them.
Yeah, he's special.
The one I'm thinking of wore number 21, and I would not have come into the year and in any way been comparing, and I'm just talking running style at this point. I wouldn't have compared Rocket style to Marcus Lattimore's style. But I got to say, watching Rocket on Saturday in the rain, run through tackles at Vanderbilt, I was having some flashbacks to 21. Like, I really was having some Marcus Lattimore flashbacks. And I think with Rocket, it's not the same exact rushing style, but there actually are some similarities in there when you see Rocket break those tackles at the line of scrimmage, when you see him give kind of that dead leg move as well. To me, there's a little bit of Marcus in there. There's a little bit of Mike Davis in there. Maybe even a little bit of Demetrius Summers in there. Like, he's kind of a combination of a lot of the really good backs that South Carolina has had. But, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I would not have said I was going to be making that running style comparison. But Rocket has been more of a between the tackles runner this year than he was, even his huge year at Arkansas.
For sure. And again, he's a big part of what this offense has been able to do these past couple weeks, and hopefully can continue as we wrap up the regular season. And now, we're going to be going to a bowl game as well somewhere in the month of December. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Maybe get Wes's review of just how Nashville was as we break down South Carolina's 28-7 win over the Vanderbilt Commodores here on your Reaction Monday on the Game.
All right, y'all. Whether you're ready for it or not, Christmas right around the corner. Time to start that Christmas shopping. And as we all know, there are folks in your life that are just difficult to shop for. How about buying them a custom framing job from our friends at Goal Line Framing? And they can frame up about anything you can think of. That could be a diploma if there are mid-year graduates in your life coming up. Could be original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Maybe there's a signed print. Really, if you have mementos from games, maybe old tickets, they could take that and turn it into a project and frame it up for you as well. They've been in business for over 20 years, so head on over to 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, they've also got an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and other gift items you can check out. If you want to go ahead and purchase that custom framing, 803-739-1337 is the number. Again, that's our friends over at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia, South Carolina.
Ooh, someone once said that Vanderbilt was the easiest place to play in the SEC, but not today. I'm going with Vanderbilt.
Oh, there's a blast off the bat of Petrie. Goodbye. The Gamecocks strike first, a two-run shot from Ethan Petrie, and South Carolina takes a 2-0 lead.
Welcome back to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you. Libby Dunn, great gymnast. Not great at picking games. That was her picking Vanderbilt, and I decided to throw in Ethan Petrie going yard on Paul Skeens for good measure.
Just for good measure.
Just for good measure. As a lot of people on the game day desk were wrong about South Carolina on Saturday.
Nick Saban.
Excellent job there, Tyler. I still don't actually know who Kirk was picking. Like, it was very confusing.
Yeah. What did they put up a graphic for him? Did it say Vanderbilt?
No, graphic said game. He said he acted like he was picking South Carolina because he said something, but, and then I think he got distracted and said Vanderbilt, but then they put up a graphic for South Carolina. So and it was never completely clear.
Okay.
If he was, but then
I thought he picked Vandy. Like, in reality.
See, I think he was trying to pick South Carolina.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Well, he can have one foot in, one foot out, and go either way, right?
Go either way. But so Nick picked Vandy?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe so.
He did.
And Vandy, so Nick might have been wrong about that. He was right about it not being a tough place to play. We make fun of Vandy a lot on this show. I had not been to Vandy in a decade, I think. I did go once before. Here's the difference. It just does not. It's difficult to play there, but for a different reason. You gotta bring your own juice, basically.
Okay.
Gamecock fans, very loud. They brought the heat, but there's just not a tailgating atmosphere at Vanderbilt. And I think I expected a little bit more in terms of that. Now, Broadway, I'm getting old, y'all. Like, it was cool, but it was also, that thing is overwhelming. Like, there's more bars crammed into a small space than I've ever seen in my life. There's like bars within bars. There's like, if you're on the ground floor of a bar, there will be live music, and then you'll be like, oh, there's a door back there. I wonder where that goes. And then you'll just be going upstairs to the second level, and there will be a completely different act going on. Mm-hmm. And you'll have had no idea, because I guess they have great soundproofing in their walls. You have no idea, and you'll be like, oh, there's another level to this bar. Let me go to it. And there will be a completely different band there. And then you'll be like, oh, this bar has a rooftop. And you'll go on the rooftop.
It's like the final boss.
Yeah. So that was cool.
That starts at like 9 a.m. too, right?
Yeah. And
like the music.
Man, I'll tell you what, if you're out there trying to get an Uber, people are out there blowing their horns like there's no mercy on the streets in terms of cars. But, yeah, that part was cool. But the tailgating.
Now, is their stadium, is it on campus? Is it in the city? Like, how does it work? How's it laid out?
It's on campus.
Okay.
And it just, so that their new end zone actually looks very cool. Mm-hmm. Like, they did a great job with that, but it just, and they're working on the other end zone. I'm sure it'll look great. They're going to, honestly, if they're going to, like, try to keep building as an SEC program, they're going to ultimately have to redo all four sides of the stadium because it just does not match. Like, there's no upper decks at all. And we were sitting there. We actually ended up going to the hotel, just like little bar restaurant that's right outside, and just hanging out in there before the game. Another interesting aspect to it, I think because Nashville is such a tourist kind of destination, we saw, of course, South Carolina fans, Vandy fans. We saw Nebraska fans, Georgia fans, Ohio fans, Clemson fans. I'm trying to think who else. I had a list going in my head. We talked to the Nebraska fans. They were like, oh, yeah, we had a trip planned to Nashville. We were just in town. And they were like, oh, always wanted to see an SEC football game. Let's just go to the game. So you have these just random people that are there just to watch a game.
Did they beg you to take Satterfield back?
I can't say the word. One of the guys I with asked, so what do y'all think your offensive coordinator? And I'll get a fine if I say what he said. So we'll leave it at that. But, yeah, I mean, great trip. I ran into so many South Carolina fans on the trip. Very fun trip. But the atmosphere, I kind of thought that it would be like just a smaller but equally exciting tailgating atmosphere to maybe what you see other SEC venues. Just was not. And we walked into the stadium like there was no wait whatsoever. We just walked in. I think we could have walked on the sideline if we acted like we were meant to be there.
I know it's limited capacity. Is it 30,000 this year? Is that right?
That's probably about right.
Yeah.
Ooh. How many Gamecock fans? What's your estimate?
I don't know. It's probably 65-35, Vandy to Carolina.
Okay.
Plenty more to dive into about this game, as we'll also look back at the SEC as well coming up tomorrow. Halftime show with myself, Terry Ford, coming up next, live from Hardee's, 496 Piney Grove Road, as we celebrate Veterans Day here on your Reaction Monday on The Game.
All right, 11:55 here on The Game. You're probably hungry like I am. Great lunch recommendation for you. Of course, it is our friends over at Firehouse Subs. FirehouseSubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. That's the easiest way to go ahead and place your order. Use the Rapid Rescue to go. You can avoid the wait and order online. That way your sandwich will be there waiting on you. 15 now Midlands Firehouse Subs locations, so no matter where you are in the Midlands, there's guaranteed to be a Firehouse Subs closest to you. Now, they've got all your favorites that you love, the meatball, the hook and ladder, the Italian, whatever you may like, but also check out the new Thanksgiving turkey sub, premium carved turkey, mayo, dressing, cranberry. It is Thanksgiving on a sub. That's the new Thanksgiving turkey sub. Again, you can order it online now. 15 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations, firehousesubs.com, or the Firehouse Subs app.